Start talking about Tim Keenan, Tim Smith, James Smith, Damon Payne. Alabama's got loads of those types of guys. It kind of starts to make you wonder, okay, how uncomfortable can they make Carson Beck? And if they can, what exactly does that mean as far as their ability, with a home crowd at their back, by the way? I think that's going to play a huge part in this, Mick.
Well, yeah. And then I think the other part is you're talking about two dynasties right now. Georgia has a dynasty. They've won 2 of the last 3 national championships. How many years did they win the SEC championship? They've played for the national championship going back to 2017. They've won the SEC. And then you got Alabama under Nick Saban. Lot of winning. Whose dynasty is more legitimate?
I mean, are you talking about like a Kalen DeBoer, Alabama?
Well, Alabama or Georgia? I mean, is the Alabama dynasty over because Nick Saban left? And does that mean Georgia is now taking over as kind of like the team to beat?
I mean, I would say Georgia right now is the team to beat, but I think that was kind of things were already trending in that direction. But I don't foresee that being like a problem. Alabama's still right there in the conversation, and it would I've said this before, Nick Saban's dynasty is over. That doesn't automatically mean that Alabama's dynasty is over. And that's what I think we're still trying to figure out. I think we've learned some stuff about Alabama through the first 3 weeks. But I think there's still a lot of question marks that you'll just have to kind of wait and see where they're at with some of these things when they play Georgia. And it's the same thing for Georgia. But, I mean, you got to remember, Georgia didn't make the playoffs last year. Alabama did. Georgia had won back-to-back national championships in the 2 previous years, and that's great. If they can win 3 out of 4, now you're on an Alabama type of run. But I don't even think that, Georgia's approached Alabama's level back in the early Saban years are really, I would say they're close. But, I mean, I still think there's a little bit of a ways to go.
Well, I mean, look, it's going to be tough to match Alabama because Nick Saban did it so consistently for so long. But when you just take a snapshot of where Georgia is right now with Kirby, it almost feels like it's extended what they were doing at Alabama, and they just moved it to Georgia. For Kalen DeBoer, you come into this game, it's all about, okay, we got to go out there and do the things that we're capable of doing. And if you're playing the best team maybe in the country, maybe number 2, whatever, but you've got to go out there and perform. I mean, you got to go out there and prove that, the as they say, the naysayers. I mean, is this Alabama program still on that level? You win that football game, and guess what? You are. You lose, you know what the talk's going to be next Monday. It's going to be that Alabama's dynasty's done.
What's your biggest concern going into the game? Is it more looking long-term and what it will mean if they lose? Is it more short-term, what it means for 2024? Like, as an Alabama fan, what would have you the most nervous as far as, and granted, you can go in the opposite direction as well. I mean, what are your thoughts on if they win, what that can mean for them, but also if they lose, what that can mean for them too?
Well, I think if Alabama wins, Georgia's in big trouble because now they've had the bad game against Kentucky, and it's not just a one-off. Alabama's had those one-offs. I mean, think about some of the games that they had, even 2009, right? They barely beat Tennessee. They go on to win a national championship. And there's been those. Now, Nick Saban was so dominant against teams that he was better than, like no other coach I've ever seen, right? But you're right. Like the defensive line for Kentucky, was that we're looking past Alabama? Was that we weren't prepared? Was that Kentucky got some great calls from the officials? Whatever it was. You lose to Alabama, now all of a sudden you're trending in the wrong direction. You're in big trouble. You're going, hey, we should have lost to Kentucky. Now we lost to Alabama. We're going to have to pull this thing together and start figuring things out. For Alabama, Alabama loses, and they're going to drop, I don't know, probably to like 9th or 10th. The media always loves to do that. Everybody's going to say, hey, it's over. I mean, they've tried to do this. Paul Feinbaum will be on his show. Told you the Alabama dynasty's over. They'll totally overinflate the win by Georgia and the loss by Alabama, but the perception of Alabama football will definitely slide. Now, if you're Alabama and you play a great game and lose, I don't think it's that big of a deal. Like 2019 against LSU. There were some injuries in that game. Tua made a couple bad plays. They lose the game. But I never felt like Alabama couldn't beat LSU. I don't think anybody watching felt like that. LSU just made a few more plays. They got the interception at the end of the first half, and then and they just took advantage of them, right? And then Alabama just kept on going after that. If Alabama plays a good game and Georgia plays a good game, and it's kind of like some of those SEC championship games in Atlanta between these two teams, people will probably walk out of there and be like, "Hey, man, these are two good teams." My worry is that Alabama approaches this game mentally like they did the Michigan game. They beat Georgia. You see them in the press conferences. I hear, we're talking about the old offensive coordinator and what he thought about Jalen Milroe being a running back, and we're talking about all this other bull crap instead of being focused on your opponent. And I thought that it translated in that game. How does Alabama handle the success that they had against Wisconsin, and also the rat poison that the media is giving them right now? Georgia's down and Alabama's up. Sounds like Nick Saban, but you know what? Nick Saban was right about that rat poison. That's what I worry about the most.
I just hope that if Georgia loses, we get some articles written about how their dynasty's over. Because you remember, if Nick Saban and Alabama lost 2 years in a row and didn't, make a national championship or win a national championship, the whole ride was coming to an end.
Yeah.
You had several articles written, but I mean, I'm with you on most of that stuff. I will say, and I think you brought this up to me prior to the show. How similar is this to you as far as the 2019 LSU game? Because it actually is like you would, as soon as you now, and it goes beyond President Trump, coming to the game,
right? Which is what I wanted to talk about too.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's it's kind of some crazy parallels as far as now. Granted, that was towards the end of the year,
right?
I felt like we knew a lot more about that Alabama team and that LSU team going into that game. I still think there's so many questions as to what Georgia did play Clemson, and they play really well against Clemson. But just the way that they've kind of played since, it's like they've left a lot to be desired. They have some question marks, especially with their offensive line. I don't think they're getting great tackle play. I don't think their interior of their offensive line, it's been kind of inconsistent up to this point, and we'll see how they do. But, as far as comparisons to that 2019 LSU game, I mean, there are several. I mean, you talk about the Carson Beck, Joe Burrow. And now, granted, at that time, by that point, Joe Burrow was certainly in the conversation to be the number one quarterback taken. Right. Carson Beck right now, a lot of people have said he could end up being one of, if not the first quarterbacks taken. So, I mean, do you think that Georgia, I think they got more defensively than LSU had that year, but offensively in the ways that they can beat you, I still think with the weapons, having to replace Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey, they're still trying to figure a lot of different stuff out as far as, who Carson Beck's going to be able to rely on a, week in, week out basis. But there are a lot of similarities.
First off, the game. I remember being there in 2019, and President Trump was there, and the extra security. I asked Kalen DeBoer about that. I interviewed him earlier this week, and he's like, "Well, we got to make the main thing, right? All about the game." But I mean, it is pretty crazy, and I don't mean crazy as in crazy, but crazy as in how big these Alabama games have gotten. That the president would want to come, or the former president would want to come watch your game. I mean, that's pretty cool. And this would be the third time that he's been at an Alabama game, because he went to the national championship game when they played Georgia. And you got to go through the extra security and all that stuff. But forget about what the politics are about it. I know that's something that we'll get in, that you guys probably get into at your house. We're not getting into that now. I'm just saying, just from making this event a super big event, all of a sudden, instead of just being a college football game, now it's a national news story. I mean, and you got all the things that go along with having a guy campaigning for president at your game. It does make the hype for it a little bit bigger, man. You see a big prize fight. You look out in the stands, and there's famous people out there. That's what it's going to be like. This Tuscaloosa is going to be the epicenter of college football next week. Game day is going to be there. Every major show, every major person.
Do you think they start calling it game of the century?
Well, I don't know, and that's what I was asking you, because it feels like the game of the century type vibe, right?
I haven't noticed anywhere that said that, but you actually will probably start getting some of those terms, because I mean you're talking 1 versus 4.
Right.
You're getting a college football playoff game in Tuscaloosa, Alabama in September. I mean, that's a really big deal. I don't know. I think it's been interesting to kind of watch Georgia like I have through these first couple of weeks. Obviously didn't see a lot of that second game, but you watch a lot of the Clemson game. You watch a lot of Kentucky this past weekend. I've really, honestly, in some ways, I feel like Georgia should already have a loss. I feel like Kentucky threw that game away.
Right.
Now, granted, you still have to convert on 4th and 8. And that
Would you have punted?
No, absolutely not. There's no
You're
way
going
I'm
for the
punting.
win. Coach
care what
Lamb is going for it here.
and I think anybody that's watching, and this isn't a hindsight thing. I said the second they punted the
See
football.
that, my coaching?
Hey, the second they punted the football, we all knew exactly how that game was going to end.
Right. Moral victory.
I was actually shocked that Kentucky even got the ball back with any time left. I thought
Right.
Georgia would hang on to it, but we all knew that once that happened and you had to march down the entire field with the way that they had been playing offense, Brock Vandegrift had not had his best game. You knew that it was going to end up being, a Georgia W. They come out of Lexington with a very tight win, and you knew that the conversations from that point forward would probably be motivating factors for Georgia moving forward. But I just think that right now, Alabama can do some things to cause Georgia's defense, or give them some problems, some different looks. And then defensively, it's all about, making Carson Beck uncomfortable. I do think on both sides of the football, they have matchups that they can exploit and win. Now, Georgia does too. It's going to be coaching will play a major part of this, because both of them do have some exploitable pieces, and how do they choose to attack those pieces will be interesting. And we'll get into that more next week when we really start hammering this matchup. But I will say, when it came out, were you surprised that it came out at 7.5?
Yes.
I was too. I feel like that was
Slap in Alabama's face.
and you know what? 2.5 feels a lot more correct.
Yeah.
I don't blame anybody for having Georgia as a road favorite.
Right.
They're I guess the number 2 team in the country now.
Yeah.
But they deserve that respect. But I feel like 7.5 was, more than a touchdown favorite. That sounded crazy to me, man.
Yeah, it does me too. Guys, let me remind you that Cover Crimson is brought to you by MyBookie.ag. Use the promo code NEXTROUND to double your initial deposit. That's right. MyBookie will double your initial deposit when you use the code NEXTROUND. Kick off the football season with MyBookie.ag and double your initial deposit using the promo code NEXTROUND. I'll tell you what, man, this is so interesting to me, because and I know that if you block Georgia, you can move the ball on them. Ohio State did in the college football playoff. Alabama has consistently in the games that they've played. You can throw on their defense, just like when Nick Saban had Kirby as his defensive coordinator. The defense is it's unstoppable against the one-dimensional teams. But when you have a quarterback that is mobile, and for all those people that have been downing Jalen Milroe, these are the type of games where he presents them with a matchup that they don't like because of the RPOs. We've seen that Alabama's also going to isolate him in an area where he's going to have a guy to beat in space, and if he does, watch out. That's going to bother them too, right? So I look at Alabama's offense and go, if they come out there and can move the ball consistently against Georgia, which is something that they've done in every single game except that national championship game when they lost Williams. After that point, I thought that that was the only time that Alabama wasn't able to move the ball on Georgia. Ohio State lost to Georgia but moved the ball on them. I think that's the thing I guess I'm worried about the most. Is it going to look like maybe when they keyed in on Jalen Hurts in the first half of that SEC championship, or the national championship game, where they brought in Tua because he wasn't able to throw the ball? Or is it going to look like last year's SEC championship game where Milroe's moving the ball, he's running, he's passing, and Alabama kind of has that defense off balance?
Alabama has to prove that they can. Let me tell you what Georgia's going to probably want to do in this game. They're hoping they can win with their front, with their front four,
right?
But all as far as sending and pressuring, but as far as stopping the run, you're trying to play with light boxes as much as you can, because if you can win enough with light boxes, you can play too high safety and you can take away the vertical passing game from Alabama. So you're talking about taking away the run game, you're talking about taking away the vertical passing game, and that is going to force the game onto Jalen Milroe's shoulders as far as the short to intermediate stuff, which is obviously where he's not comfortable right now. What encouraged me the most about Alabama versus Wisconsin was the fact that you saw a lot of between the tackles running. They were a lot more successful on that front, with Caden Proctor coming back, Elijah Pritchett moving over to right tackle, Tyler Booker moving back into left guard. You saw an offensive line that could get a consistent push. Now, Wisconsin's defense is nothing to write home about, but they're going to need the the inside running with the running backs. You're going to need to complement that with Jalen Milroe as far as attacking the perimeter with his legs.
Yeah.
And then you've also, if you can do that and force Georgia to bring more guys into the box to try to stop some of that stuff, now your vertical passing game is going to get opened up. So it's going to be all a matter of, can Georgia win with lighter boxes, or are they going to have to commit more to stop Alabama's run game? Because in my opinion, that's going to be the key to everything. And I'll go ahead and tell you, you've got
when you talk like this.
Hey, we got me fired up about it, and I was planning on talking about this, and we will more next week. We'll be breaking all this stuff down. But I'll go ahead and tell you.
Getting a little taste of this stuff.
Hey, can we move the game up a week?
No. I like this.
Man,
it's like
I'm
the
fired
Super
up.
Bowl. It's like the Super Bowl. You need 2 weeks to pump that game up. Like this, I'll take the appetizer, the Tennessee-Oklahoma game. Heupel going back. Oklahoma doing everything they can to learn how to stop this offense, because Heupel's going to try to stick it to him. That's your appetizer. And then we got DeBoer against Kirby Smart. That's the main course.
Now, I will say, Mick, it's interesting because heading into the year, this felt like such an offense-driven team.
Yeah.
The entire identity was going to be built around the offense, and you thought that the defense was going to be good enough to play complementary football to that. I will say, and I don't know if it's going to be this week, but at some point this season, I'm 100% convinced at this point that Alabama's defense is going to need to win them a football game.
Okay.
Because I do think that this Alabama offense, it can be pretty inconsistent as far as how they win. If the vertical passing game isn't there, if Jalen Milroe's off, if the opposing team's doing some things to try to take that away, you've got enough athletes to be able to force Alabama to try to have to attack the short to intermediate parts of the field, then Alabama's offense is going to struggle. That means, now granted, based off of what I've seen so far, I understand that they've been kind of vulnerable against the run. I think that's getting used to Kane Womack's defense.
Right.
I mean, it's a much different scheme as far as the one gapping versus the two gapping, the run fits, the responsibilities when you're playing that wolf position as a shallow off-ball linebacker, all that stuff. It's very tough to kind of get comfortable and used to the requirements of being able to stop the run, because a run defense, it's all about run fits.
Yeah.
It's all about getting gaps covered, and if a gap's left uncovered, the offense is going to exploit it. So as they get more, I'm not really overly worried about that. I think they'll continue to get better as the season progresses, but like I said, it could be next week, or it could be at some point in the future. But Alabama's defense is going to need to win them a football game, and I do think they have the talent and the coaching staff on that side of the football to be able to make it happen.
This matchup could happen again. The other thing is, with the playoff, the significance of this game is diminished. And this is why I wasn't in favor of the playoff when it first came out, because the regular season had always been the playoff. It's not a playoff anymore. Both of these teams could easily make the playoff. You're not talking about in the past, this would be an elimination game. That's the only, temper of this, but I'm excited, man. And the comment section, I'm excited about you guys too. I'm looking at you guys. I've been described as Tucker Carlson. Thank you. On here.
It's better than Luke Combs, I guess. That's what I get compared to.
Yeah. Good to see you guys. I see Chris is in here, our Auburn friend. We got Stephen, our Vols friend. We got the rest of the gang in there. Lance, good to see you. Bob and Dustin and all you guys. Thank you for hanging out with us, and Roll Tide, everybody. We appreciate you. Join Cover Crimson. $1 for the first month. If you get the annual subscription, you get a Cover Crimson t-shirt, and that is definitely worth it. So take advantage of that, guys. And thank you for being a part of what we're doing here. that's why we're here. I mean, we're game planning for the future, building this channel, but you guys are the ones that have made this off to a great start. Please continue to watch and subscribe, and then share with your friends too. Give us a thumbs up as you hang out with us on the live show today. All right, let's talk about your offensive and defensive players of the team so far, of the season, even though we're only 3 games in.
Quarterway.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you want to go offense or defense first?
Let's go defense first, because I think I have an idea who this might be.
To me, it's pretty. There are a lot of guys.
There's one guy that stands out.
Defensively or offensively?
Defensively.
It's got, for me, and you might have a completely different answer. The obvious choice might not be as obvious.
Fall off the chair if you don't say this guy.
Jihad Campbell.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, you have to.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to. Like, there's no other choice.
Keon Sabb, LT Overton's been phenomenal, and LT Overton's getting better. But Jihad Campbell, man, I mean, that guy's on pace in the regular season for, I think, close to 130 tackles.
Yeah.
He's been phenomenal. Either led the team or tied the lead.
He's flying around with the number 11.
And I don't even.
Where was that 11 last year?
Mark my words. When Kane Womack's talking about them having some things that they've brought into game weeks where they didn't have to implement any of it because they were winning, in other ways, there will be some things with Jihad Campbell specifically that you will see them move him around, do some different things, and he is going to be an even bigger problem, in my opinion, than he's even been up to this point. To me, he's one of the best players on the defensive side of the football in all of college football.
Me too.
And that is, you talk about Deontay Lawson. I think he played one of his best games in a crimson uniform against Wisconsin.
It's not a knock on anybody else.
Absolutely not.
LT's been great, man.
They've all been. Keon Sabb deserves to be in this conversation. I think Tim Keenan has been very consistent as far as his ability to kind of create havoc or make it difficult to kind of stop the run or to establish a run game, and he's been able to push the pocket a little bit. So they've gotten quality play out of several guys, but to me, Jihad Campbell has easily been the most consistent. Easily,
and if you would have said someone else, I mean, there's been some other guys. LT Overton's been great too, but I mean, Campbell is a force right now, and I see him playing, and he plays deep in the games. I'm always like, man, let's put this guy in bubble wrap and save him for next week because we don't need anything happening to him. He's been so impressive, and we got flashes of that last year. This year, he's really come into his own. All right, let's talk offense.
I'm going to let you go first because I'm curious to hear what you say. Are you going to go?
Look, as much as I like Ryan Williams and what he's been able to do, it's Jalen Milroe, and people want to argue with me about Milroe. I don't even know how the Milroe conversation has turned into something that is at times controversial. Man, the guy's got more touchdowns. He's going to score more touchdowns running than Cam Newton and
Tim
Tebow, right? And those guys both won a Heisman and won the national championship. Look, this guy is not – I know he's got limitations in certain areas, but you know what? It's college football, okay? A lot of teams and players have limitations. We get inside the red zone, and his ability to run the ball is why we're not really kicking field goals. We're going like this. We're going like this because the touchdowns are being scored, right? And it's because of his ability to run. You got to respect the fact that the guy can run the ball, and now he's got a coach that is like, hey, I just want him to go out there and play ball, right? Do we want him to throw? I hear people say, hey, like Bryce Young, can he just pass guys open? Is he going to be better at the intermediate and short passing? I'd love to see him improve with that. But when they block for him, when he doesn't have guys running in his face, when he's moving this way, you better watch out, man. The guy's been a machine. He's setting records by throwing touchdowns and running them in that we've never had at Alabama. Could there be a game like the Michigan game last year where maybe Alabama is I felt like the offensive line in that game and the blocking let them down. They still only lost in overtime. Could that happen? Could that happen next Saturday? Yeah, but to me, I think Jalen Milroe is clearly in the Heisman conversation, and despite his limitations, I look at the things that he does well, Clint, and I love his home run hitting ability. The guy is like Babe Ruth.
I love how Kalen DeBoer and Nick Sheridan are creating opportunities, some isolated matchups for him out on the perimeter. I think that's been absolutely huge because he can make guys miss. He can break tackles. He's very physical. But to me, I'm not going Jalen Milroe.
Oh.
I'm not going Ryan Williams.
Whoa.
I'm going Parker Brailsford.
Okay.
I'm a trench guy.
All right.
And I'm
Sound
telling
like
you.
Mike Johnson on the All-American report.
And I'd love to get his take on it. Whether, because he is bringing that trench mentality.
Okay.
I would he go with Jalen Milroe or would he go with maybe, and I could see an argument for Tyler Booker too,
Right.
especially with his ability to kick out and play left tackle for a game. I don't think people quite realize how difficult that is.
Yeah.
But, for me, Parker Brailsford has been the best transfer addition. I understand Jerry Bernard's making an impact at receiver. I understand Keon Sabb is making a huge impact at safety.
But having clean snaps.
Clean snaps is where it starts, but that is not even close to – that is like such a small –
Calling out defenses.
just everything that the guy can provide. He provides a nastiness. He's 290, listed at 290 now. I wouldn't be shocked if he was closer to 280, 285, something like that. Either way, he plays like he's 330.
Yeah.
He's got a bulldog mentality. He's short, he's stocky, very hard to win the leverage game against him. I think he's just a really fun player to watch, and I think he's been a complete godsend for Alabama's offense.
I'm not going to argue with that. I got to do shows twice a week with Mike Johnson. And he would not like that.
I think he's going to be disappointed that you even went with Jalen Milroe in the first. Well, and that's not a knock on Milroe.
I'm just saying this, man. What the guy's doing is leading him towards the potential Heisman Trophy because of all these touchdowns he's scoring. But he's not half as successful if you don't have those big guys up front. So and having a center that can get him the ball cleanly, that can call out defenses, that is the gel that the offensive line has. If they play like they did against Wisconsin, against Georgia, then all of a sudden it's not a one-off. It's not that, hey, we're clearly more athletic than these guys. It's okay. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that. The year that they lost the Texas A&M when they had Johnny Manziel. What year was that?
2012.
2012, okay? And we were like, run the ball. Run the ball. They wouldn't run it. You would sit there and watch it. After that game, Alabama started running the ball behind that big offensive line, and they were trucking teams. And look, they're going to throw the ball deep, but when this team's able to run the ball on you, you're in big trouble. Because if you got to bring people up to stop the run, you better watch out deep.
I think that is that's such an important part of this. And we'll know more about Parker Brown. We'll know more about Jalen Milroe against Georgia. We'll know more about Keon Sabb. We'll know more about all these guys. But especially the guys in the trenches, how far along is Alabama's offensive line? It got some hype coming into the season, warranted hype, despite the fact that they had a lot of hype going into last year. And that kind of, at least for most of the season, fell well short of expectations. But this offensive line so far, now that you've seen it healthy, and I understand this is what I'm having a hard time with. You watch it on film, you get really excited because you're like, man, against Wisconsin, they were completely dominant. They had guys back in the right spots. They had the right guys available. And I think that moving Wilkin Formby to your number 3 tackle where he's, you've got some depth there. You got Geno Vandermark there on the interior. You feel pretty good about the depth as well, but here's the thing. I keep having to remind myself, we all knew Wisconsin's defensive line was not that great.
Right.
And so the fact that Alabama, it's a nice helmet game. Wisconsin, you go up there to Camp Randall, you get a win, a massive win. The offensive line had a huge, hand in that. But Georgia's going to tell us a lot about where this, the big guys up front stand. If they can run the football consistently or consistently enough at least, they can to where they can create some shot plays like they're going to want to do. I think defensively they're going to be able to cause Georgia some problems, and I think they're going to be able to capitalize on some of the potential mistakes that Carson Beck makes if they are able to cause those problems. So, I'll be excited to see how it goes.
Guys, thanks for hanging out with us in the comment section. Joe, I see your comment. Stop talking about all the Milroe criticism. I'm talking about in the comment section. Part of this is comment section or even the Cover Crimson message board. But get in there and hash it out. Look, I'm giving you my opinion. You may feel differently about all of this stuff. But what's fun is that's what makes sports. We can get in here and duke it out and talk about it. Like that's what I like the most about covering Alabama every day. and then, hanging out with you guys. So thank you for being in there. Keep those messages coming. Tell me what you think. Who's your offensive and defensive MVP? What do you think about Milroe? Am I off base? Or are you saying, Joe, hey, who cares what anybody else thinks? He's got it. The guy's done nothing but win, and he's ready to lead Alabama to a national championship. We'll all find out about that as the season goes on. But the last thing I want to say is we're brought to you by MyBookie.ag. Use the promo code NEXTROUND to double your initial deposit. That's right. MyBookie will double your initial deposit when you use the code NEXTROUND. Kick off the football season with MyBookie.ag and double your initial deposit by using the code NEXTROUND. You guys have any topics that you want us to get into on the show? If you're Cover Crimson members, please do it. Even in the comments section here on YouTube, let us know what you want us to talk about as we start to get closer and closer to that Georgia-Alabama game. But had a great time today, Clint. Good to see you in person, man.
Great to see you. And someone yesterday on the message board, they wanted to know as far as Alabama's down and distances on third down. Mm-hmm. I went through, broke all of that down.
Oh, yeah.
Shared
Great
that over
stuff
on the message board. I've also done that because, once you give me an idea, I can't stop. So I've gone through and I've broken down every run that both Jam Miller and Justice Haynes have had, the success. A lot of, there's some underlying numbers here that I want to get into, and I haven't shared that information on the message board yet, but I'm going to be doing that probably later this afternoon, maybe in the morning. That's going to be a phenomenal conversation because I don't think people quite realize there's been a lot of their yardage has come off just a few runs.
Right.
And I think people do realize that. But I will say there are some things that I really want to get into as far as the conversation between Justice Haynes and Jam Miller. And we'll do that tomorrow after I've shared the stuff to the message board.
All right, check us out, covercrimson.com. And thank you for hanging out with us here on the Cover Crimson YouTube channel. Like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Coming up later today, the All-American Report with Mike Johnson. We talked about Alabama and Georgia, including the blackout 2008, which was Nick Saban's coming out party, and Mike was there. And then and Mike, I don't think Mike's missed a Georgia game in a long time, because he's in Atlanta. But we talk about that, kind of the battle between Alabama and Georgia, and a lot of similarities, but also a very heated rivalry that'll take place again the next edition Saturday in Tuscaloosa. Not this Saturday, but next Saturday. So thank you guys for hanging out with us, and we'll do it again tomorrow. Roll Tide, everybody.